to the Poetry Moment, featuring Philip Levine's The Poem of Chalk. I'm Chania Hudson. Philip Levine said he liked to think of himself as a Detroit-sized poet. Born in Michigan and raised in Detroit, Levine was the poet in residence at New York University for many years. In an episode of Hoko Pulitzo's interview show, The Writing Life, Levine read this poem and offered in an introduction to the poem that New York City was overwhelming and confusing at first to a Detroit poet. Gradually, though, Levine said he felt less alien and started writing poetry about things he saw on his 3-hour walks from his apartment on Bleecker Street around New York's downtown. This poem describes a man Levine met on one of his walks, an elegant man, a little demented, but articulate, writing on a street corner's air with a stick of chalk. He was, as Levine called him, a poetic gift. The slightly mad, wise person is a literary trope that appears in poetry by Wordsworth, Lorca, and Jimenez. This odd wise man from Senegal standing on a New York street corner was, Levine said, the person you stumble upon who appears to know so little, then at further glance, knows so much more than you do. Levine, who began working in Detroit's auto plants when he was 14, made a vow that he would find a voice for the voiceless when he became a poet. The factory worker, the Spanish anarchist, the slightly mad genius on a Manhattan street corner, all are given voice by Levine. For his poetry, Levine won Guggenheim Fellowships, the Ruth Lilly Poetry Prize, and many teaching positions. Wherever he went, he walked and stayed curious, in a way of feeding his art. Levine said, if our eyes are open, we're encountering these sources of wisdom in poetry constantly. And now, The Poem of Chalk by Philip Levine.
The Poem of Chalk. On the way to Lower Broadway this morning, I faced a tall man speaking to a piece of chalk held in his right hand. The left was open and it kept the beat, for his speech had a rhythm, was a chant or dance, perhaps even a poem in French, for he was from Senegal and spoke French so slowly and precisely that I could understand as though hurled back 50 years to my high school classroom. A slender man, elegant in his manner, neatly dressed in the remnants of 2 blue suits, his tie fixed squarely, his white shirt spotless though unironed. He knew the whole history of chalk, not only of this particular piece, but also the chalk with which I wrote my name the day they welcomed me back to school after the death of my father. He knew feldspar, he knew calcium, oyster shells. He knew what creatures had given their spines to become the dust time pressed into these perfect cones. He knew the sadness of classrooms in December, when the light fails early and the words on the blackboard abandon their grammar and sense, and then even their shapes, so that each letter points in every direction at once and means nothing at all. At first I thought his short beard was frosted with chalk. As we stood face to face, no more than a foot apart, I saw the hairs were white. For though youthful in his gestures, he was, like me, an aging man, though far nobler in appearance, with his high carved cheekbones, his broad shoulders, and clear dark eyes. He had the bearing of a king of Lower Broadway, someone out of the mind of Shakespeare or Garcia Lorca, someone for whom loss had sweetened into charity. We stood for that one long minute, the two of us sharing the final poem of chalk, while the great city raged around us. And then the poem ended as all poems do, and his left hand dropped to his side abruptly, and he handed me the piece of chalk. I bowed, knowing how large a gift this was, and wrote my thanks on the air, where it might be heard forever. below the seashell's stiffening cry.